Imagine having the power to literally lift a mountain.
Right.
Like to just effortlessly wipe out entire armies.
Right, just absolute world-bending strength.
Exactly. You could fly across oceans. You have the ultimate power. But there's a catch.
There's always a catch.
Whoa, the massive one. You are walking around completely convinced that you're just, well, an average, heavily flawed, powerless individual.
Which just sounds completely insane when you say it out loud.
It really does. But this paradox is actually, it's the ultimate ancient metaphor for what we now call imposter syndrome.
Right. It's fascinating.
So welcome to a brand new deep dive. I'm really excited you are here with us today because we aren't looking at some modern self-help manual.
No, definitely not the latest, like, Silicon Valley of productivity hack.
Yeah, exactly. Today we are diving into a really comprehensive source text called Hanuman, The Path of Devotion and Fearless Strength. We're looking at the psychology of an ancient figure who represents, like, the absolute peak of human potential.
And we are really getting into the architecture of the mind today. I mean, you probably already know the legendary feats.
Right, like the leap across the ocean.
Exactly. You know about the burning of Lanka. But what we're doing today is, well, decoding the specific psychological framework that allowed his mind to process that unimaginable level of pressure.
Because that's the whole mission of this deep dive. We aren't just recounting mythology here. We want to extract the the molecular antidotes embedded in this narrative for very modern problems.
Yeah, decoding how an ancient symbol of immense strength actually holds the exact mechanisms to dismantle daily anxiety.
And threshold paralysis. And that crushing self-doubt that, just creeps up on all of us. But I want to start with a fundamental contradiction that is just, well, it's always bothered me about the way we view power.
Okay, lay it on me.
So when you look at the ancient texts, they are absolutely packed with incredibly powerful beings.
Oh, for sure. Gods, demons, celestial warriors.
Right. Beings who could basically vaporize a city with a single thought. So why is Hanuman revered in a completely different category? Like, what sets him apart?
I mean, it really comes down to the rarest commodity in human psychology, which is restraint.
Restraint. Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, Hanuman possesses unlimited power, and I mean that literally within the physics of the epic, but he holds this incredibly unique position because he never, ever allows that power to metastasize into arrogance.
Wow. So he keeps the ego completely out of it.
Exactly. Every single action he takes is in the service of Dharma, which is often translated as cosmic order or righteous duty, and it's all in devotion to Lord Rama.
So true greatness, in this framework, it's defined exclusively as service, not superiority.
Right. It's not about dominating others. It's about how you serve.
I have to challenge this right out of the gate, though, because, I mean, look at the world you and I live in today. It's a hyper-competitive modern world.
Oh, absolutely. The hustle culture.
Yeah. If you're a CEO or an entrepreneur, or honestly even just climbing the corporate ladder, society basically tells you that humility is a liability.
Right. Like, it'll just get you walked all over.
Exactly. People think humility is just, masked insecurity. So how do we reconcile Hanuman's absolute humility with the fact that he's still this undefeated warrior?
Well,
Because deep down, doesn't everyone with power want at least a little bit of credit?
see, that is exactly the trap of the modern ego. We completely equate humility with weakness, as if being humble means you have a really low opinion of yourself.
Right, which isn't true.
Not at all. True humility isn't thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less.
Oh, wow. I really like that. Thinking of yourself less.
Right, because when we look at how power naturally breeds arrogance, it's just a totally predictable neurobiological and psychological sequence.
How so? Like, what's the actual sequence?
Well, you acquire power. Maybe it's wealth, maybe it's a huge promotion at work, or just like massive social influence, and the ego immediately tries to claim ownership of it.
Ah, I see. The ego steps in and says, look what I did.
Exactly. The ego says, I am intrinsically better because I possess this thing. But Hanuman disrupts that sequence entirely.
Because his restraint is his most extraordinary quality.
Exactly. He has the ultimate resume to demand worship, right? But he consciously chooses to frame his entire existence as just a conduit for a higher purpose.
So he acts as an instrument rather than the origin of the power. That's a massive paradigm shift.
It really is. It changes everything about how you operate.
Because think about the modern influencer economy, or, the whole hustle culture thing we just mentioned. It's an entire economic system built on broadcasting every tiny achievement.
Oh, for sure. Just to elevate our status above someone else's.
Right. And it's exhausting. If even a tiny bit of success makes the average person completely insufferable on LinkedIn.
Oh, tell me about it. We've all seen those posts.
Right. So Hanuman is the total antithesis to that entire ecosystem.
He really is. And, let's just speculate for a second on what society would look like if this model were actually the default.
Oh, man. It would be unrecognizable.
Right. Like, what if the primary metric of success for our tech billionaires or our politicians wasn't market dominance? What if it wasn't poll numbers, but the depth of their restraint?
That would completely rewire our social structures.
Exactly. What if the more powerful you became, the more you genuinely perceived yourself as a servant? It wouldn't just change how we lead. It would completely change how we interact with our own success.
Because if you detach your ego from your achievements...
You also detach your ego from your failures.
Oh, wow. That's profound. You basically become psychologically invincible.
Exactly. The highs don't make you arrogant, and the lows don't destroy your identity.
But how do you actually build that? I mean, how does a human mind arrive at that state of perfect equilibrium where you have immense capability but zero ego?
Well, to understand that, we have to look back at his origins.
Right, because overcoming the gravitational pull of the ego just feels practically impossible for most of us.
It does, but we aren't just talking about his physical parents here, Anjana and Kasari. We're talking about his spiritual lineage.
Okay, right. He's the son of Vayudev, the god of the wind.
Yes, and the symbolism of the wind Vayu is absolutely critical to understanding his psychology. We shouldn't just look at wind as weather.
Okay, so how should we look at it?
Think of it as physics. Think of it as kinetic versus potential energy. Wind is everywhere, right?
Yeah.
But it's formless. It's completely invisible.
Right, you can't grab it.
Exactly. And it can be a gentle, cooling breeze, or it can be a devastating hurricane. It is raw, limitless, unconditioned potential.
And the ancient narrative suggests that this exact same Vayu energy exists within us.
Yes. It exists within the architecture of every human consciousness, just waiting to be tapped.
That's amazing. And to illustrate that unconditioned potential, there's that super famous story from his childhood. Right?
Wow, the leap toward the sun, yeah.
Yeah. He's a kid, he looks up at the sky, sees the rising sun, and literally mistakes it for a glowing, delicious fruit.
Right, he just wants to eat it.
And without a single second thought, he just leaps into space to grab it. Now, as an adult, I hear that story, and my modern brain immediately thinks, that's just childish recklessness.
Sure, because you know the science.
Right. The sun is 93 million miles away, and it's made of incandescent plasma. He'll burn up. So how do we distinguish between genuine childlike fearlessness and just, being dangerously naive?
See, that right there is the adult mind rationalizing its own limitations.
Really? How so?
We have to contrast the unbounded mind of a child with the heavily conditioned mind of an adult. When a child sees something they desire, they don't immediately run like a statistical risk assessment.
Yeah, that's very true. They just go for it.
Exactly. They don't calculate the physics or worry about the probability of public humiliation if they fail. Their mind is completely unbounded by the conceptual parameters of the word impossible.
So they don't even know they shouldn't be able to do it.
Right. What we call dangerous naivety is often just pure action unburdened by heuristic biases.
Wait, unpack that for me. Heuristic biases.
Yeah. So as we grow up, our brains naturally develop these heuristic shortcuts. It's to save energy and keep us physically safe.
Like learning not to touch a hot stove.
Exactly. We learn that fire burns, gravity pulls, and failure hurts. And that's completely necessary for basic biological survival.
Sure. Otherwise, we wouldn't make it to adulthood.
Right. But in the process of learning those physical rules, we also internalize a massive amount of psychological self-limiting beliefs.
Oh, I see. We put our potential into a conceptual cage.
Exactly. We learn to fear rejection, so we don't ask for the promotion. We learn to fear embarrassment, so we don't start the business we've been dreaming about.
So what you're saying is, as adults, we constantly disguise our fear as pragmatism.
Yes, 100%.
We call our reluctance to take a massive leap being realistic or, having experience. But looking at that leap toward the sun, it really forces you to ask, how much of our accumulated adult knowledge is actually just accumulated fear?
I would argue a staggering amount of it. Hanuman's leap isn't about ignoring the reality of the physical world. It's about not letting the fear of reality prevent the attempt.
Wow. So it's a mechanism of action where you don't reject your own potential before you even try.
Exactly. The tragedy of the human condition isn't that we try and fail.
Right.
The tragedy is that our conditioning convinces us we can't even make the jump in the first place.
Which perfectly brings us to perhaps the most fascinating psychological twist in this entire deep dive. Because if we all start with that formless, unconditioned value energy.
That childlike fearlessness.
Yeah, exactly. If we all start with it, where does it go? Why don't we all retain it?
Well, the source text offers a brilliant mythological event that follows the leap toward the sun.
Right, because he gets struck down and cursed. And the specific nature of this curse maps so perfectly onto human psychology that it is, honestly, it's chilling.
It really is. The curse is fundamentally spiritual amnesia.
Spiritual amnesia.
Yeah. Because of his reckless leap, he is cursed to completely forget his own divine powers.
Just total amnesia.
Total. Absolute amnesia regarding his own immense strength until someone else explicitly reminds him of who he truly is.
This blows my mind every single time I think about it. You have the single strongest warrior in existence. A being who can literally manipulate mass and gravity walking around, completely oblivious to his own capability.
Right. He thinks he's just an ordinary foot soldier.
And what does that remind you of in the modern workplace?
Oh, it is the exact literal definition of imposter syndrome.
Exactly. It's so wild to see it written about anciently.
Because imposter syndrome isn't a lack of skill, right? It is an overactive threat detection system combined with deep spiritual amnesia.
Yeah, you see this everywhere. Highly capable, incredibly intelligent people walk into a boardroom where they sit down to write a book.
And they are utterly paralyzed by the thought that they are frauds.
Exactly. They suffer from this delusion of inadequacy. But the capability is sitting right there inside them, completely intact.
It hasn't vanished at all. The neuroplasticity is there. The experience is there. The only thing missing is their conscious awareness of it.
So, if we're all walking around heavily sedated by this amnesia, how do we break the spell?
Well, you can't just forcefully logic your way out of it.
Right. You can't just stare in the mirror and say, I am strong, if your brain fundamentally doesn't believe it. Affirmations don't always work like that.
No, they don't. The narrative tells us we need an external catalyst, which takes us to the shores of the Southern Ocean.
Okay, set the scene for us here, because this is a massive turning point.
It's one of the most pivotal psychological moments in the entire epic. Lord Rama's army has marched all the way to the southern tip of India.
Right, and they must cross the ocean to reach Lanka to rescue Mother Sita.
Exactly. But they hit a massive geographical and psychological wall. They are standing on the shore looking at this vast, impossible expanse of churning water, and the entire army is frozen by doubt.
It's collective threshold anxiety.
That's a great way to put it, yes.
And Hanuman is right there with them, just sitting quietly on a rock. The amnesia is in full effect.
He's basically looking at the ocean thinking, well, somebody better figure this out because I certainly can't.
Which is so relatable. And this ocean, it's the ultimate metaphor for any massive psychological barrier, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. Everyone stands at the edge of an ocean at some point in their lives.
For sure. For some, it's an ocean of severe clinical anxiety.
Or it's the terrifying prospect of a massive career pivot. Or navigating a devastating divorce.
Or just staring into a sea of total crippling uncertainty about the future. When you are standing on that shore, the distance between where you are and the opposite shore always looks conceptually unbridgeable.
Your brain literally cannot compute the path across.
Right. And when you are in that state of cognitive freeze, what happens next in the story? A senior figure, Jambavan, steps forward.
Yes, Jambavan. And what he does is brilliant. He doesn't give Hanuman a new weapon.
He doesn't hand him a strategic map of the air currents or a boat.
Exactly. He does something much more profound. He walks up to Hanuman and simply reminds him of his true nature.
He recounts the story of the wind. He recounts the leap toward the sun.
He essentially holds up a psychological mirror and says, have you forgotten who you are? And in that exact instant, the amnesia shatters.
Boom. Just like that. Let's look at the neuroscience of what Jambavan is actually doing here, because it's fascinating.
Yeah, when a human being is in a state of threshold anxiety, the amygdala, which is the brain's fear center, hijacks the prefrontal cortex.
The logic just shuts down.
Completely, you freeze. But Jambavan's intervention bypasses the amygdala by invoking identity rather than strategy.
Identity over strategy. I love that.
Right. By reminding Hanuman of his inherent nature, he shifts the brain state from threat detection back to purpose and capability.
I really want everyone listening right now to internalize this, because we all desperately need a Jambavan in our lives.
Oh, without a doubt.
Think about your own trajectory.
Yeah.
There's usually that one specific teacher or that one manager early in your career.
Or just a deeply insightful friend who pulls you aside when you're spiraling and says, Stop. Remember what you are capable of.
Exactly. We all need that mirror. But here's my question for you about this moment. Once Hanuman remembers his strength, and he expands to his massive size, he takes the leap, right?
He does. A massive leap across the ocean.
But he leaps before he has any idea how he's going to navigate the obstacles over the ocean. Isn't that, like, incredibly dangerous? Shouldn't we demand absolute certainty before taking a massive risk?
Well, that is the illusion of modern control.
The illusion of control.
Yeah. We demand a 100% guarantee of success before we are willing to take the first step. We want to know exactly how we will handle every potential demon in the water before we even leave the beach.
Right. We want the whole plan mapped out on a spreadsheet.
Exactly. But Hanuman's leap is a masterclass in trusting the process. Faith taking you further than fear. He leaps with the absolute conviction that his purpose will generate the necessary solutions in real time. And he handles the obstacles. And there are several terrifying demons that try to pull him down mid-flight while he is already in the air.
So the lesson is that momentum creates clarity. You cannot solve mid-air problems while standing on the beach.
Exactly. You have to jump first. But let's look at what happens when he actually lands.
Right, because crossing the ocean is only part one of the mission.
Yeah, because it's one thing to have the courage to take the leap. It's an entirely different psychological challenge to operate effectively in enemy territory.
Which is Lanka.
Right. When he lands in Lanka, he is completely alone. He is surrounded by thousands of hostile forces in a hyper-militarized city.
Logically, his nervous system should be redlining with panic. I mean, mine would be.
Anyone's would. But he moves through Lanka without a shred of fear.
Let's dissect the mechanism of that fearlessness. Because we constantly get courage wrong in our culture.
We really do. We think courage means you don't feel fear.
Exactly. If you are waiting for the absence of fear before you speak up in a meeting or before you launch your product, you will literally wait until you die.
You'll never do it. Courage is acting despite the terror.
But how does Hanuman override his own biology to act so decisively in Lanka?
He overrides it through radical service.
Radical service. How does that stop fear?
Well, when your focus is entirely on self-preservation, when your internal monologue is just, what will happen to me? Will I look stupid? Will I get hurt? Fear has maximum leverage over you.
Because the ego is the entity that experiences fear.
Precisely. But when Hanuman shifts his entire conscious focus to a higher purpose, how can I serve Lord Rama? How can I find Mother Sita? The fear literally dissolves.
Because the ego has been temporarily deactivated. There is no self left to be afraid.
Exactly. The focus is entirely outward.
That brings us to one of the most intense and, honestly, visually arresting moments in the epic. The burning of Lanka.
Oh, it's such a powerful sequence.
Hanuman's tail is set on fire by the enemy. But instead of panicking or pleading for mercy, he uses that very fire to systematically burn down their magnificent city.
Yes, he turns their punishment into his weapon.
But let's decode this, because earlier you mentioned that we shouldn't just look at this as physical destruction. Why is burning a city a psychological mandate?
Because Lanka represents our internal kingdom. In this framework, Lanka is the fortress of our own negative traits.
So it's a metaphor for the mind.
Yes. It represents anger, greed, jealousy, deep-seated ignorance, and massive ego. It is a city built on the illusion of control and material obsession.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here for a second. When you talk about burning down your anger or jealousy, it sounds dangerously close to just repressing negative emotions.
But I see where you're going.
Yeah, because modern psychology tells us that repressing your shadow side just makes it stronger. So how is burning Lanka different from toxic repression?
That's a brilliant distinction to make, actually. Repression is locking the demons in the basement and pretending they don't exist.
Right. Just slapping a smile on and ignoring it.
Exactly. But burning Lanka is active conscious purification. It's what cognitive behavioral therapists might call cognitive reframing or exposure therapy.
Oh, interesting. So you're facing it head on.
Yes. You don't ignore the jealousy. You confront it, you recognize that it is a structure built by the ego, and you actively dismantle it.
So you have to be willing to let the destructive, ego-driven parts of your identity burn to the ground to make way for actual clarity.
Exactly. If you cling to your inner Lanka, you will never experience psychological freedom.
Man, that is powerful. And speaking of clarity, I want to pivot to my absolute favorite demonstration of Hanuman's problem-solving in the whole deep dive.
The San Giovanni Mountain.
Yes. the Sanjivani mountain. This sequence is a masterclass in bypassing analytical paralysis.
It truly is. I mean, let's set the stage for the listener here. During the Great War, Lord Rama's brother, Lakshmana, is mortally wounded.
The situation is incredibly dire.
Extremely. The only thing that can save him is a specific glowing medicinal herb called the Sanjivani, which grows on a distant mountain in the Himalayas.
And time is rapidly running out.
Right. So Hanuman is dispatched to retrieve it. He flies thousands of miles, locates the specific mountain, and then he hits a massive roadblock.
Which is so funny to me because he's a phenomenal warrior and a deeply read scholar. But he is not a botanist.
No, he isn't. And all the herbs in the mountain are glowing. He cannot identify the correct one.
Put any modern professional in that exact scenario today. What happens?
Total decision paralysis.
Exactly. They would agonize over making the wrong choice. They'd form a committee. They'd, schedule a Zoom call to discuss the glowing herbs.
Yeah, they'd be terrified of picking the wrong plant and being responsible for Lakshmana's death.
They would completely freeze at the micro level of the problem.
Yes. The fear of making a mistake would completely stall the entire mission. But look at Hanuman's cognitive flexibility here.
Right. He doesn't sit there having an existential crisis about his lack of botanical knowledge.
No, he realizes immediately that he cannot solve the problem at the micro level. So what does he do? He zooms out.
He shifts from microanalysis to macro action.
Exactly. He physically uproots the entire mountain, puts it on his hand, and flies the entire ecosystem back to the battlefield so the experts there can pick the herb.
I just love this so much.
Yes.
He completely bypassed his own limitation. He didn't let the lack of specific knowledge stop the broader objective.
He really didn't.
He is the ultimate ancient example of not letting perfect be the enemy of done.
Oh, that's a great way to frame it.
Because think about how often we stall out on a creative project or a business plan just because we don't know one specific tiny detail.
Right. We say, I can't start a business because I don't know which accounting software is the absolute best.
Exactly. But Hanuman says, if you can't pick the herb, bring the mountain. It is a profound shift in how we approach problem solving. It's pure systems thinking.
It is. And, because of visceral feats like lifting a mountain or leaping across an ocean, it is very easy for a casual observer to reduce Hanuman to a caricature.
Oh, for sure. Just the muscle of the group.
Right. They see him merely as the muscle of the operation, a symbol of brute physical brawn. But that is a massive misreading of the texts.
If you only focus on the physical strength, you completely miss the core of his genius.
Exactly, because if someone is just listening to the mountain lifting story, they might mistakenly think Hanuman is just this instinctual powerhouse.
But pure strength without a governor is dangerous. It's tyranny. So what keeps his power in check?
The ancient texts are very explicit about this. His greatest power wasn't physical at all. It was his intellect and his self-control.
He's actually a true polymath.
He is. The scriptures describe him as a master of the 9 Vyakaranas, or grammar systems.
So he's a linguist, too.
Yes. He is a master of language, diplomacy, music, and deep Vedic philosophy. He was an ideal, voracious student under the sun god Surya.
I'm struggling with this synthesis a bit, though. You're saying he's a master of grammar and high-level diplomacy, but he's also literally a monkey deity who acts on pure devotion and leaps across oceans.
Right. Seems like a contradiction.
Yeah. How do those two things coexist? Doesn't deep intellect usually breed a kind of cynical detachment?
In our modern world, yes, it often does.
Right. We usually associate highly intellectual people with a lack of faith and highly devoted people with a lack of critical thinking.
And you've just identified one of the most toxic dichotomies in modern society right there.
Yeah, how so?
We absolutely separate those spheres. We put the intellectuals and the academics in one corner, assuming they must be cynical materialists.
Right.
And we put the spiritual seekers in another corner, assuming they must be naive or anti-intellectual. And then, of course, we have a third corner for the strong athletic types.
We silo human potential.
Exactly. But Hanuman completely shatters those silos. He proves that true spiritual devotion does not require you to be ignorant of how the world works.
That's fascinating.
In fact, mastering grammar and language is essential because language is the structure of reality. If you master language, you master thought.
So striving for inner peace and devotion doesn't mean you have to stop learning or stop achieving or stop being strong. He integrates all of it.
He perfectly integrates intellect, physical power, and emotional devotion. And if we apply this specific synthesis, his focus, his discipline, his deeply rooted purpose to the modern world, we find a direct structural antidote to our current mental health crisis.
Let's pull on that thread, because the world we live in right now is a recipe for chronic anxiety.
Oh, it's brutal on the nervous system.
Right. We are dealing with information overload, constant algorithmic notifications, severe career uncertainty, and total sensory burnout. Our nervous systems are completely fried.
They are. And what the architecture of Hanuman's mind suggests is that discipline and devotion are the twin pillars of psychological resilience.
The twin pillars. Walk me through how they work together.
Well, when a mind is anchored by a clear, disciplined purpose, when you have a routine, when you study, when you work hard, it naturally builds walls against chaotic stress.
Okay, that makes sense. Discipline provides structure.
Exactly. But discipline alone can become rigid and brittle. You can burn out on pure discipline. That's where devotion comes in.
Ah, I see.
When that disciplined mind is softened by devotion, by the belief in and service to something vastly larger than its own immediate petty worries, it becomes remarkably calm.
So discipline builds the structural walls of the mind, and devotion furnishes the room with peace.
That is a beautiful way to phrase it. Yes.
Okay, so understanding these virtues conceptually is fascinating. We've talked about the physics of the Vayu wind, the amnesia of imposter syndrome, the neuroscience of threshold anxiety at the ocean.
Bypassing paralysis with the mountain.
Right, and integrating the intellect. But how does a listener actually internalize this? We can't just nod our heads at the philosophy. We need a mechanism for daily application.
And this is where we move from ancient theory to very practical cognitive behavioral application.
What does that look like?
The tradition highlights the use of specific mantras, primarily Om Hanuman Nama, and the daily recitation of the Hanuman Chalisa.
Vachalisa.
Yes. The Chalisa is a 40-verse hymn written by the poet Saint Tulsidas in the 16th century, and it is recited by millions of people globally every single day.
If you are listening to this, you've probably heard the Chalisa, or at least heard of it. And there's a really famous specific verse in it that promises that negative energies and ghosts will literally flee from anyone who chants his name.
Right, the verse about the ghosts.
Now, obviously, we can look at that literally from a traditional faith perspective. But what is the psychological mechanism happening there? What does it mean for a modern person to have ghosts flee from their mind?
Well, we all have ghosts.
That's true.
The psychological interpretation of this verse is incredibly profound. The ghosts are the lingering traumas of your past.
Stuff that keeps you up at night.
Exactly. They are the haunting, cyclical regrets you replay at 2 a.m. They are the phantom anxieties about a future scenario that hasn't even happened yet.
So how does chanting make them flee?
The mechanism of the mantra is displacement.
It is placement.
Yes. The text argues that when your mind is actively, continuously filled with the archetype of supreme courage, when you are consciously invoking the fearlessness of Hanuman, there is quite literally no cognitive bandwidth left for those ghosts to occupy.
Wow. So courage actually displaces anxiety. You can't hold absolute fearlessness and petty anxiety in your conscious mind at the exact same millisecond.
Exactly. You physically cannot hold both states at once. And the practice of chanting the Chalisa isn't just framed as a magical incantation. Let's look at the neurobiology of chanting itself.
Oh, I'd love to. What happens in the brain?
Rhythmic, repetitive chanting has been shown to suppress the brain's default mode network, or the DMN.
What is the DMN responsible for?
The DMN is the part of your brain that is active when your mind is wandering, and it is the exact neurological neighborhood where anxiety, depression, and self-referential rumination live.
Oh, so that's where the ego overanalyzes everything.
Exactly. By engaging in rhythmic chanting, you are actively suppressing the DMN. You are creating a deeply meditative effect and actively rewiring your neural pathways to default to a state of calm strength rather than chaotic fear.
It's cognitive conditioning. It's literally doing reps for your mind, just like you do reps in a gym for your body.
Yes, perfect analogy.
Alongside this auditory conditioning of the chanting, there is a very famous visual symbol in the tradition that reinforces everything we've talked about today. It's the iconic image of Hanuman physically tearing open his own chest.
It is an incredibly striking, visceral image.
Yes, he literally rips open his chest cavity, and right there, physically residing inside his heart, are the images of Lord Rama and Mother Sita.
Which, when you first see that image, it's intense.
Very intense. But what is the psychological code embedded in that visual? What's the lesson for the listener?
The code is about the ultimate direction of your attention.
Your attention.
Yes. The message is, whatever you choose to fill your heart with will entirely dictate the trajectory of your life.
Oh, wow.
If your heart is filled with greed, your life will be perpetually restless because greed has no finish line. If your heart is filled with anger and resentment, your life will be painful and combative.
That makes total sense.
But if your heart is filled with devotion, with a commitment to a pure, higher purpose, your life inherently becomes meaningful regardless of whatever external circumstances you are facing.
And what's brilliant is that this isn't just left as a grand metaphor, you know. The tradition offers a deeply practical daily routine based on these principles.
Absolutely. You don't have to retreat to a cave in the Himalayas to practice this.
You can do it right before your morning commute. The practice suggests starting the morning quietly, using a mantra like Om Hanumate Nama to center the mind and, as you said, suppress that anxious default mode network.
Right. Calm the wandering mind.
And then spend a few moments expressing genuine, unforced gratitude. And finally, actively choose one of Hanuman's specific qualities. Maybe today you need his courage for a tough conversation.
Or his discipline to finish a hard project.
Or his humility to actually listen to feedback, and you intentionally carry that specific archetype into your modern workday.
Because prayer and meditation in this tradition are meant to inspire massive action, not replace hard work.
Right. You still have to do the work.
Spiritual practice is not an excuse for passivity. Hanuman didn't just sit on the beach staring at the ocean praying for the water to miraculously part.
He definitely did not.
No. He prayed, he remembered who he was, and then he fired his muscles and he jumped. Faith and effort are the two wings of the bird.
If you only pray but don't act, or if you only act but have no deeper anchor, you will just spin in circles. You need both to fly.
You know both to fly, exactly.
Man, let's just take a breath and synthesize this incredible journey we've been on. For everyone listening, we didn't just walk through an ancient myth today.
No, we mapped out human psychology.
We really did. We looked at the physics of your own inner vayu, that limitless, unconditioned potential you had as a child before the world told you what was impossible.
We diagnosed the amnesia of imposter syndrome that constantly convinces you aren't enough.
We looked at the neuroscience of threshold anxiety and how to find your Jambavan to help break the freeze. We analyzed how to trust the process and cross your own ocean of fear by acting despite the terror.
We saw the cognitive reframing required to decisively lift the mountain when micro-details paralyze you.
And finally, we saw that ultimate power isn't about brute force, but the deep, stabilizing integration of intellect, self-control, and devotion.
It really is a complete paradigm shift for how to operate in the modern world.
It really is. But before we sign off, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final provocative thought to chew on today. We spent a lot of time discussing how Hanuman's ultimate invincibility came from his ability to completely erase his own ego.
Right, by focusing his attention entirely outward in service to Lord Rama.
Exactly. He was unbreakable because he wasn't obsessing over himself. But think about the modern world you are sitting in right this very second. We live in what economists literally call the attention economy.
The attention economy, that's exactly what it is.
You are surrounded by screens, endless feeds, apps, and algorithms that are meticulously mathematically designed by thousands of engineers to do one thing, and that is to constantly distract you.
To capture your gaze.
Right. They are designed to shatter your focus and to forcefully, violently pull your attention inward toward your own ego, your own desires, your own comparisons, and your own deep-seated insecurities.
It's terrifying when you frame it like that.
So, if Hanuman's greatest strength came from his unwavering outward devotion, how much of our modern daily crushing anxiety is simply the result of our focus being trapped entirely inside ourselves?
Wow. That's a powerful question.
What or who is the inner Lanka of digital distraction and ego that you need to actively burn down today so you can finally free your attention?
That is the ultimate question to carry forward, because where your attention goes, your reality follows.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. I hope you find the Jambavan you need, or better yet, that you become one for someone else today. We'll catch you on the next one.